The American poet Robinson Jeffers is in all standard anthologies of American poetry, but he seems to have made very little impression on readers from the UK. However, I was very interested to note a few days ago that a critic has tried to discern the influence of Jeffers on the work of Ted Hughes. I'd never heard this thesis before, but looking at Jeffers' poems, his obsession with hawks, his obsession with the natural environment do seem to lead some credence to this theory. Jeffers built his own house out of stone blocks, and he lived there with his wife all his life. And out of this isolation, his voice rings very powerfully. This is his poem, probably his best known poem, Shine, Perishing Republic. While this America settles in the mould of its vulgarity, heavily thickening to empire and protest, only a bubble in the molten mass pops and sighs out, and the mass hardens. I, sadly smiling, remember that the flower fades to make fruit, the fruit rots to make earth. Out of the mother, and though the spring exultances, ripeness and decadence, and home to the mother. You, making haste on decay, not blameworthy, life is good, be it stubbornly long, or suddenly a mortal splendour. Meteors are not needed less than mountains. Shine, perishing republic. But for my children, I would have them keep their distance from the thickening centre. Corruption never has been compulsory. When the cities lie at the monster's feet, there are left the mountains. And boys, be in nothing so moderate as in love of man. A clever servant, insufferable master. There is the trap that catches noblest spirits, that caught, they say, God while he walked on earth. And this poem, Apology for Bad Dreams, is a poem about the environment, the very isolated environment near the sea where Jeffers lived. It's called Apology for Bad Dreams. In the purple light, heavy with redwood, the slopes drop seaward, headlong convexities of forest, drawn in together to the steep ravine. Below, on the sea cliff, a lonely clearing. A little field of corn by the stream side, a roof under spared trees. Then the ocean, like a great stone someone has cut to a sharp edge and polished to shining. Beyond it, the fountain and furnace of incredible light flowing up from the sunk sun. In the little clearing, a woman is punishing a horse. She had tied the halter to a sapling at the edge of the wood, but when the great whip clung to the flanks, a creature kicked so hard she feared he would snap the halter. She called from the house a young man, her son, who fetched a chain tie rope. They, working together, noosed the small rusty links round the horse's tongue and tied him by the swollen tongue to the tree. Seen from this height, they are shrunk to insect size out of all human relation. You cannot distinguish the blood dripping from where the chain is fastened, the beast shuddering, but the thrust neck and legs far apart. You can see the whip fall on the flanks, the gesture of the arm. You cannot see the face of the woman. The enormous light beats out of the west across the cloud bars in the trade wind. The ocean darkens, the high clouds brighten, the hills darken together. Unbridled and unbelievable beauty covers the evening world. Not covers, grows apparent out of it, as Venus down there grows out from the lit sky. What said the prophet? I create good and I create evil. I am the Lord. This coast, crying out for tragedy like all beautiful places, the quiet ones asking for quieter suffering, that here the granite cliff, the giant cypresses crown demands what victim, the dikes of red lava and black what titan, the hills like pointed flames beyond Soberanes, the terrible peaks of the bare hills under the sun, what immolation. This coast, crying out for tragedy, like all beautiful places and like the passionate spirit of humanity, pain for its bread. Gods, many victims, the painful deaths, the horrible transfigurements. I said in my heart, better invent than suffer. Imagine victims, lest your own flesh be chosen the agonist, or you martyr some creature to the beauty of the place. And I said, burn sacrifices once a year to magic, horror away from the house. This little house here you have built over the ocean with your own hands, beside the standing boulders. For what are we, the beast that walks upright with speaking lips and little hair, to think we should always be fed, sheltered, intact and self-control? We, sooner more liable than the other animals. Pain and terror, the insanities of desire, not accidents but essential, and crowd up from the core. I imagined victims for those wolves. I made them phantoms to follow. They have hunted the phantoms and missed the house. It is not good to forget over what gulfs the spirit of the beauty of humanity. The petal of a lost flower, blown seaward by the night wind, floats to its quietness. Boulders blunted like an old bear's teeth break up from the headland. Below them all the soil is thick with shells, the tide rock feasts of a dead people. Here the granite flanks are scarred with ancient fire. The ghosts of the tribe crouch in the nights beside the ghosts of fire. They try to remember the sunlight. Light has died out of their skies. They have paid something for the future, luck of the country, while we, living, keep old griefs in memory. Though God's envy is not a likely fountain of ruin, to forget evil calls down sudden reminders from the cloud. Remembered deaths be our redeemers, imagined victims of our salvation, white as the half-moon at midnight. Something flame-like passed me saying, I am Tamar Caldwell, I have my desire. Then the voice of the sea returned, when she had gone by, the stars to their towers. Beautiful country, burn again. Point Pinos down to the Soar rivers. Burn as before with bitter wonders. Land and ocean and the Carmel water. He brays humanity in a mortar to bring the savour from the bruised root. A man having bad dreams, who invents victim, is only the ape of that god. He washes it out with tears and many waters, calcines it with fire in the red crucible, deforms it, makes it horrible to itself. The spirit flies out and stands naked. He sees the spirit. He takes it in the naked ecstasy. He breaks it in his hand. The atom is broken. The power that masked it cries to the power that moves the stars. I have come to myself, behold me. I bruised myself in the flint mortar that burnt me in the red shell. I tortured myself. I flew forth, stood naked of myself and broke me in fragments. And here am I, moving the stars that are me. I have seen these ways of God. I know of no reason for fire and change and torture and the old returnings. He being sufficient might be still. I think they admit no reason. They are the ways of my love. Unmeasured power, incredible passion, enormous craft, no thought apparent, but burns darkly, smothered with its own smoke in the human brain vault. No thought outside, a certain measure in phenomena, the fountains of the boiling stars, the flowers on the foreland, the ever-returning roses of dawn. Having read this poem aloud, obviously normally I read poems silently, and having remembered Ted Hughes reading his own poems aloud, I can certainly see, to me, there is a great deal of correctness in the suggestion that Hughes had read and was influenced by Robinson Jeffers. Jeffers has always been regarded in his home country as one of the great poets of the 20th century. And I've always liked him, I think, since I was probably about 20, which is more than 50 years ago. And there is an enormous power in his writing. I remember now he lived in Big Sur in California, and his home attracted a number of visitors, some very unlikely ones, but he remained there alone with his wife. At the end of his life, he published an enormous amount of correspondence. I think this is recently, one of the American university presses has begun to publish one of these volumes, which I think I looked at recently, which was very interesting because of the vast range of his correspondence and the absolute affinity between the man, the letters, and of course the poems themselves. This immense view across the sea, across the surrounding bare countryside. His most famous line, which isn't in the poems I read, is, "I would rather kill a man than a hawk." And I can understand this when you look at human life, the suffering inflicted by man upon man. The Holocaust, which is probably, although it may not numerically have been as great as the suffering inflicted by Stalin, the Holocaust, that terrible memorial of man's inhumanity to man. And you can see in Jeffers why he turned away from man and found God in strange, lonely and beautiful places. And the quality of his writing, to me, is unsurpassed. I think Hughes, at the end of the day, is possibly a lesser poet than Jeffers. Although Hughes' early poems are immensely powerful, he did not continue to write at that level. And sadly, towards the end of his life, I think in birthday letters particularly, there is an absence of focus. I think Hughes was writing these under the shadow of knowing his own death was coming, and a sense that he did not want to be forgotten. I attended a memorial service to Hughes that was in Royal Festival Hall, and it was very good to hear his translation of Ovid. Whether it was entirely an original translation or he worked on something that someone else had provided for him, I don't know, and I don't know whether this is actually known, but these readings from Ovid were incredibly powerful. I never met Hughes. I was told through Alan Tarling, who published both Hughes and I together in the early 1960s in his Poet and Printer Press, that Hughes liked my work. We never met. He was going to come to Leeds where I would have met him, but the reading was cancelled at the last moment, so we never actually met, though Martin Bell, a very close friend of Hughes and mine that would have introduced us, is one of the great sadnesses of my life that Hughes and I never actually met. And it's a great delight to find that in Robinson Jeffers we share a common love of a particular poet.